Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this Squared Up V4 training webinar on building dashboards and perspectives on top of enterprise applications. My name is Matthew Long, and I'm joined today by Kevin Roast.
Hello.
Kevin's from our engineering team and is the lead on a couple of different features in the product that we're going to show you today, so I thought he was a perfect guest to join us. So with that, let's quickly get started. We've got a lot to show you in the time slot today. So we're looking at this session at building dashboards and perspectives on top of EAs. To do that, we're going to need to have a quick discussion of the structure of an EA and how health rolls up between the EA, because this is a design decision when we're building the things to make sure that you can expose the right level of health monitoring to your business so that everyone understands what they're seeing, what they're getting, and isn't exposed to the flood of information that SCOM can often provide when it's monitoring an app. And then we'll look at using some Squared Up V4 features, specifically the matrix tile and chain scope, to enable you to create some really cool perspectives and sort of top-level service dashboards and things like that. So, just in case you haven't been exposed to EAs before in our previous videos, an enterprise application is a construct that allows you to model the internal health of your app, so databases, servers, disks, all that kind of good stuff, along with the business-facing, so user-facing health of the application. So, is the app actually meeting its business needs? Is it providing the value that it needs to your business? This is always the promise that sort of DAs made, but they never really actually delivered. And the main reason was they couldn't separate those two different concerns. So enterprise applications, at least Squared Up, makes it really easy to configure these synthetic tests that monitor the availability of your app from an end user perspective. So we have that nailed down. And then by default, these are the only thing that sets the top level health of the enterprise application. So if you create a dashboard for your boss that says, look, here's our service catalog, here's our sort of 10 key apps, he knows that if that thing goes red, it means end users are being impacted. You don't have to explain to him anymore, oh, well, actually, it was red, but it was only red because of a redundant disk that failed in a cluster, so it didn't actually mean red. No one was impacted. That's not what you want to deliver to your boss. So this is really, really key. And then for the actual app teams internally, the EA also contains a detailed map of all the components and infrastructure that make up the app, discovered using Vader. And that health state can then be used by the application teams to monitor and troubleshoot the app internally. So if a redundant component fails, they know about it and they can see how it's impacting the app, but it's not affecting the end user health because it's redundant by nature. The thing's been load balanced or whatever, and end users aren't actually seeing any downtime because of this. And then finally, the EA can link to dependencies as well, which could be another piece of infrastructure, maybe your hypervisor, or could be external services that you depend on in the cloud, or just other EAs because one app depends upon another app. And again, now you can get visibility of the health of those things without actually tying that to your availability tests. So people can see, okay, this app's being affected by, say, the SAN being down, but I'm not going to go and bother this app team about it. I clearly need to talk to the SAN team. Enterprise applications are available in the EAM and EAM Plus licenses. So you need to have those to be able to make use of this feature. Now, to build dashboards on top of these things, what you need to understand really is the SCOM class model for them. So as I mentioned, EAs are a new type of distributed application. They're, as Richard likes to call them, they're DAs done right. And they're provided by the Squared Up EAM management pack. So that's a new MP that comes shipped with V4 that enables this sort of template of this special type of DA. Enterprise applications derive from DAs, so they will appear alongside any of your existing DAs in any dashboards or SCOM views that you have that target the distributed application class. So in the SCOM console, monitoring, distributed applications, bam, your EAs are there, and they will supplement your existing work. So if you've already modeled all your apps using DAs and you're happy with those, there's no reason to throw them all out. You can build EAs as well and have them on the same screen, and you're good. That said, they do not derive from user-created distributed applications. What that means is you can't modify them using the SCOM console's DA designer. And though we internally when we're building V4, we really tried to actually support this, but ultimately they just put so many limitations on us having to support the DA designer that ultimately we had to abandon this. Now, that said, the Vader and EA designer support all the functionality you'd need using the DA designer. So you can add arbitrary groups and add arbitrary objects from SCOM into that using the little plus button inside inside Vader. So there's no reason for you necessarily to actually go back and have to use the DA designer to modify these things anyway. That said, if you're an MP author, you can create your own EAs using the MP authoring tool of your choice because they are just a SCOM class structure at the end of the day. So you can, use VSAE or the select tool or whatever else you want to use to build these things. And you could also export an EA that's been created using Squared Up as a management pack using the export button, modify that with whatever changes you like, even seal it if you're deciding to do some sort of change control process where all of our MPs are sealed first, put in source control, and then deployed via CI and CD, and then import that into SCOM and it'll work fine. Now, obviously, changes that you make If those are just simple tweaks, like you can't find an object in the search inside Vader, so you manually add it in, that kind of thing, that's fine. Those will be honored by the EA designer and work okay. The dashboards will work fine. If you do something advanced, like maybe you want to do dynamic population for one of the groups or something like that, the dashboards may work, but the EA designer might not honor it if you try and edit there. So I think the guideline I give you is that once you start editing EAs using your own authoring tools or building your own, that's the tool you have to use now to make changes and updates to that in the future. So what I would say is, if you think you're going down this road, get in touch with the lovely support team first and just walk through your use case, and they can advise you of all the ramifications and sort of things to be aware of when doing this. Okay, so that's the sort of class model. In practice, probably the more important thing is the health model. So how this works is, this is a typical mock EA here. You have your EA at the top level. That will contain underneath it an availability object, which will have a SCOM group under that with all of your tests. So whether that's a web test or a TCP test, or if you've used existing object or custom PowerShell, those will all appear underneath there. And then you have your map, which has got all your sort of infrastructure components, databases, websites, servers, everything you want to have in that. And then finally, you have your dependencies, where you can put infrastructure, other apps, load balancers, all the kind of stuff that isn't really part of your app, but is part of the underlying fabric that your app sits on top of. And we've broken it out into these different tiers to give you the ability to surface the right kind of health to the right kind of audience. So there's the sort of health roll-up layered on top. So at the top level, the enterprise application health is really what you want to publish to the users of your business. They don't care about the lower level stuff. They just want to know, is this service running or not? Now, the IT operations team probably do want to have a bit more insight into what's going on. Is it this app that's directly down, or is it one of the things it depends upon? Is this thing affecting end users or not? So they want that distinction. And then your actual app teams, they're the ones who want to be able to see everything inside the app and where things are going wrong. Now, as I said, because the health of the EA is dependent upon only the availability monitoring, this granularity makes it really cool when you have outages. So, for example, let's say that this database here fails. The health rolls up all the way to the map, so the teams who are seeing a troubleshooting dashboard that shows information from the whole of the EA, they can see that, they can get those alerts. The IT operations team now can see the categorization of that as going down, but they're not being flooded with all the complexities and specific nature of what's going wrong. So they're not, getting the sort of noise problem that SCOM has when you have these issues going on. But the end users are still seeing green at the top. They only see red when something actually impacts the availability column. So now they can see in their top level dashboard, look, this application's having some problems. I should expect limited or a loss of functionality. But still, again, the operations team know it's impacting the end users, and everyone in the troubleshooting team can see exactly how, look, this component being down here is impacting this availability test, and that is rolling up to the end users. So that granularity is what enables you to create really accurate dashboards that serve the audience perfectly by focusing on showing the appropriate object, the appropriate people in that role. Now, that's a lot of talking. Let's get a bit more technical. The way that you can expose a lot of this information is via the matrix tile. And this is where Kevin comes in, because this is his sort of birth child. So the matrix tile allows you to create really cool tiles and dashboards where there's a lot of information sort of displayed together in a grid, effectively. So this replaces the dynamic table tile, for those of you who are familiar with Squared Up v3. And basically it gives you a whole bunch of different visualizations that you can include. So I think, Kev, what do we got here on this sample?
So we got the health icon being displayed, and we got the health state history as well, showing the little blocks there, so you can see the roll up of the health state history over time. That's kind of the status block tile, showing a bit more information, how long that the item's been healthy for, and of course an SLA gauge at the end there.
Yep.
Which is a powerful tool as well.
Yeah, so rather than having to have loads of different tiles in the thing, you can see them all aligned nicely. And the really cool thing about matrix tile, and definitely Kevin deserves some props for this, is the whole thing is JSON configurable. So when you create a matrix tile out of the box, it comes up with a sort of default suggestion based on a template. And we'll talk about those again in a future webinar. Comes up with a suggestion of what you should have, but then you are free to actually configure this matrix tile to your heart's content and put exactly the information that you want on there, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and we've got public documentation for that, so you can see what those JSON configurable snippets are, and you can place the very visualizations that we've got onto your tile in any order that you want. And there's information about each of those ones that's displayed on this slide here as well.
Yep. So talking is all very good, but let's actually see a demo of this. So I'm going to get Kevin to walk us through creating a sort of high-level status dashboard using the matrix tile.
Okay. So one thing I will do as I create the matrix tile is I'll use our own public documentation that's available to our customers. So there's nothing up my sleeves here. So I'm going to create a new dashboard, just a new draft dashboard. So create a new draft dashboard. And one of the things I will do actually, so I will pop up the time frame for the page. So I'm going to use that as part of the demo.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter what this dashboard's called, but we'll just make it a demo dashboard.
Yep.
And what we're going to do is, in the context of EAs that Matthew's been discussing, we're going to bring up a matrix tile, and we're going to put some information up that's relevant for some EAs that's going to show some pretty cool visualizations within that table grid. So first thing we're going to do is scope the tile. And we want to scope to EAs. So if we look for the base object that represents our EAs, there we go. So straight away, you can see we've got the beginnings of a table here. So at the moment it's pretty simple to start with, but there's the list of our EAs with the health status shown here. And what we'll do straight away to show you another feature is just make that bigger. So for wall monitors and so on, this is great. But for demos as well, this is a neat feature so we can see the display easier. And then we're going to go straight into the columns JSON configuration. So what we'll do is we'll modify this, and again we'll use bits and pieces from our own internal documentation. So I'm just going to copy a few bits from there.
The Blue Peter effect, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like, here's one I made earlier. And although the indenting looks a little wonky here, will all be sorted out by our JSON there just shortly. So if I just
Yep. So while Kevin pastes that in, it said every single example we're going to show you here is available online on the page. And I think Kev's going to show you that in a second. So this is not some black magic that you have to memorize or reach out to the support team beforehand.
Yeah. So I've customized the label here for this block. Now, it's not very exciting customization. I put enterprise application at the front of the label, but you can see straight away that's something you wouldn't previously been able to do before 4.0 with the dynamic table, but now you can with the matrix tile. So what we'll do is we'll add some more exciting columns. So again, I'll use our documentation for this. So let's add in the health state history column, because that's an exciting one.
I've got a comment here in the chat that people love the health state history column. So
cool. I'll just pop that in. So one thing that you have to be aware of with these, some of these do use kind of like GUIDs that might seem magical, but we do supply information on the documentation about how you find these in SCOM. And I think Matthew's explained this before in previous coffee breaks and so on, how you find IDs for SLAs and SLOs.
So the cheekiest way to get a lot of this stuff is to, if you configure a tile with the same sort of visualization, so you want an SLA ID, go and configure an SLA tile, and then once you finish configuring it, hit the cog on the tile, click on the little code button to get the JSON behind it, and the GUID will be there. So that's the easiest way of doing it.
Okay. So what I'll do here, so that's nice. We've got some health state history for the last 12 hours there, but that's obviously not taking up the full column. It's not, this could look a little better, I guess. So why don't we do that?
Looks a bit Microsoft at the moment.
Yeah. So what we'll do actually is just put some display config in, and this is a config option that we use to tell this particular tile to take up the entire width of this cell. So this is what have I done there?
Spot the typo.
Oh yeah. It is a typo.
Oh yeah, it's JSON, so it's case sensitive. There we go.
Okay, so there you can see this is a nice looking tile now taking up the whole width of the column, and it also responds to the page time frame that I want to show here. So that's now the last 24 hours, which is very neat.
So now you can make one dashboard and the user can specify the time they want.
Yeah. So we'll add one more column to this, and again back to our documentation for this, and we'll add the SLA gauge. So if I just pull this across by copying and pasting it, and you can see most of the cell tile types have neat little examples that you can pretty much copy and paste verbatim across from our docs, just changing perhaps the odd ID and customizing various bits and pieces for display as you see fit. And of course, you can move the order of these around just by moving the chunks of JSON within this list here. So changing the order of your columns and so on. So this SLO ID, well, this is very much a case of here's one I prepared earlier, again, by following the docs on how you get the correct SLO ID. I happen to know this is the right one for our EAs. And there we go. Straight away, we can see the SLA gauge has appeared. And again, that's kind of like fine, but it's, again, kind of got about a third of the screen each.
It's auto-widthing, right?
So that's something we'll just change as well, using a slightly different option.
Well, Kevin pops that in. I should point out the SLO ID we've got there is actually the one from the Squared Up EAM custom management pack. So we ship with a customizable management pack that has an SLO built in already, and that's the one that's being used in all the EA dashboards you're seeing out of the box. So if you make changes to that, all of our dashboards honor it.
Okay, and there we go.
Oh,
so just
beautiful.
tuck that in neatly at the end of the tile there. So there we go.
Yep. So now we've got a lovely dynamic dashboard that's going to show, as we add new apps and map them, you can give this to your boss, put this on a big wall screen and say, look, here's all our apps. Here's what they've been doing for the last 12 hours, 24 hours. You pick.
I can change that, for instance.
And the SLA respects it as well, right?
Yes, it does. Yeah, you should see some of those change, actually. If I flick between, there you go, see the numbers change depending on which range we're using.
Exactly. So that's really good. So now we can provide that high-level dashboard, or, you could go really in deep here, right, and have all these different columns that show off the different breakdown of components and key performance metrics and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so that's the matrix demo. That was nice. So that's the sort of first thing I wanted to show you is, like, how do you build those top-level dashboards? The next sort of topic I wanted to tackle is perspectives. So perspectives are a really powerful feature of Squared Up. And when building perspectives, you often want to show related components. But in the case of EAs, because we have these three different sort of categories, if you like, or areas, the availability, the map, and also the dependencies, realistically, you might only want to show off components from that certain place. Like if you go at the moment in Squared Up, if you just say EA, show me all children underneath it that are SQL databases. What will happen is it will show you all the databases in your app and all the databases in your dependencies as well.
It's all children.
Yeah. So if you say, like, oh, show me all servers in this app, and you've put the hypervisor in your dependencies, congratulations, you're showing every VM on the same hypervisor. That's not helpful anymore. The change scope avoids this problem by letting you walk or navigate the SCOM relationships between objects. So you can create one perspective and then dynamically have that perspective apply to all of your EAs and show off some facet of the EA that's important, without having to tell users, okay, click on this, then click on this, then click on there, then go to this perspective, and now you can see what you want to be able to see. So as a sort of diagrammatic example, let's say this is an example of an EA we've got here, and here's at the top, got availability map. I've removed dependencies from this diagram, but obviously that would be over here as well. And let's say you wanted to create a perspective on your test, your availability tests, that says when a web test fails, show me all of the IIS web servers only inside this app. Because that'd be an appropriate sort of first thing to go to, maybe if that's a common failure in your environment. Now, from a test client, if you were to manually specify, well, just show me this web group, which you could do by saying other object, it's great for one EA, but how are you going to do that for all of your EAs? Like, that becomes very time consuming very quickly to keep doing that. So instead, what we can do is we can create a perspective where we say, we're using change scope, go up one level to availability monitoring, then up one level again to availability, then up another level to the EA, and then come down the tree and at the map specifically, then do a query for, children recursive of class IS computer. And that will then highlight only these two servers here. And you can do this for loads of different features. You can go through the map this way. You can show dependent servers that are broken. You can say, show me only tests in certain tiers. So you could say, okay, show me servers only in the SQL tier specifically, and sort of drill down even further. It's a really, really powerful feature that, again, we can thank Kevin for. So I'm going to have him walk us through another example now.
Okay, so I'm going to demo that feature. So what we'll do for that, or actually go back to the dashboard that we created earlier, and I'm going to use one of these EAs to do that again, and we're going to navigate into it from the dashboard we just made. So that's quite neat. So we're going to also be showing off the power of perspectives in Squared Up, and I know Matthew and Richard have talked many times about how powerful they are, but here's another really good example. Now, we're actually going to be building kind of something similar to one of the existing perspectives for an EA, but it gives you, this is why we ship the useful, interesting ones, but I will be building something similar.
Okay.
So what I'll do is I'll create a new perspective against this EA, and what I'll do is I'll use the matrix tile again, like we did earlier, just because it's very visual kind of demo then, and you can see stuff happening. So this is where we keep the advanced scope, change scope under this advanced tab here. So this is what you'd be used to seeing, being able to traverse relative objects and so on, like Matthew said, but this may not be specific enough for what you're looking for if you want to traverse a more complex object model like we have for EAs. So under advanced, you'll see this panel. It looks similar. So the main thing here is you've got a plus button. It allows you to add scope, so walking through the object model a step at a time. So what we'll do is we will start walking down the availability structure that Matthew showed you before, and run another step here. Now you can see that we've start to walk down through the availability model. There's sort of hints here as to what the previous step within the scope was. And then we're going to go through the SCOM group that Matthew mentioned. So we're just going to walk one level down through the SCOM group for availability monitors, and that's fine. And then we're going to get to the things we actually want to see. So under here, we use the little squared up for feature, being able to pop down the list here. And we're going to show the availability monitor test objects here. So if we pick the class for that, you'll see the various steps we've got for the scope, and you'll see here that we have a list of those availability tests. Now, so we've got several machines here that are all running tests against the squaredup.com EA to see, test the availability, perhaps from various geographic regions and so on. That's the kind of use case for this.
Yep, we covered this in a previous one. So.
Yeah, so there you go. You can see how I've walked the object model that Matthew described and produced a relevant list from that if I attempted to just go straight down from the EA, I'd have all sorts of servers and bits and pieces here, and that wouldn't be showing you the kind of things that you want to see.
Yep. And because you're picking classes in this walking step as well, this perspective could apply to any other EA as well, right? Like it's now going to say, or go up from a
that's right, because it's perspective, The initial kind of scope is fed into the perspective of the current object that the perspective is running against. So in this case, this EA, if you went to any other EA, once you save this perspective, you'd see the list that was relevant for that EA.
Excellent.
So what I'll do actually quickly while Matthew tells you a bit more about that is I will actually show you how, when you get used to this, it may look a little complicated walking that model, but obviously once you get used to it, you can do it quite quickly. So I'll just quickly do another one.
While Kevin configures that. So the ideas here are kind of limitless. Like from an EA, show individual tests, maybe that are failing globally or in a certain site, maybe show all the databases in this particular application, maybe show me, all of the load balances in the dependencies, so I can see like break down there, okay, the load balances that we depend upon for this app, are they working? Any way that you need to sort of go from one component inside the EA to another, this becomes really easy to make it traverse.
So what you can see here is once I've traversed the scope again, I've also now refined the list of available metrics. So now you can see the response time metric for those EA tests is available, and I can change the time frame and so on. So let's neaten this up so you can see it a bit easier. I can even do cool things like change the label, which I'm sure you've seen before. Yeah, so let's put the path on, because that's quite neat, because then you can see which machine was running the test. And there straight away, using the change scope, we've got a graph of various different EA monitors running against this particular EA.
Yep, and this is a template, effectively. So now I've got 100 apps. All 100 apps have this dashboard.
That's right.
So I'm not having to go and create hundreds of dashboards for hundreds of applications. I can create a good default set, hand that out to my organization, and then my my IT operations staff and app teams can then go and create the couple of dashboards they need specifically for their needs.
Yeah.
So a lot of value delivered there. Excellent.
Okay,
so thank you very much for that demo, Kevin. So with that, we are out of time for this particular session. So I hope that's got your sort of imagination inspired of the kind of things that you could do and start showing, as I said, sort of top-level maps to your boss, showing SLOs and SLA gauges and health state history breakdowns. Let your users know how long the app's been running for. Start giving information to your IT ops team to say, look, you can see the app is having a problem, or the app's not having a problem, its dependencies, route the issue correctly rather than bothering us. And then you can deliver to your app teams, look, here's the full map, all the health state information for this particular application and the impact it's having on upstream and end users. So this is a really cool stuff. So definitely, if you've got the EM and EM Plus license, really go to town on this one, guys, and get this stuff modeled. I guarantee you, do this for one of your top tier applications. You'll see real value for this, and you'll get loads of buy-in from people. And so it's definitely worth checking out and looking at. Okay, so with that, as I said, unfortunately we're out of time. If you're on the webinar live, feel free to ask a question in the chat, and me and Kevin or the engineering team will get to that shortly. If you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to leave a question in the comments box, and we'll try and answer that, or reach out to our lovely support team, who will be more than happy to answer any questions you have. So with that, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much, Kevin.
Cheers.
And have a great day, guys.